Welcome, dear one. Let the day loosen its hands from your shoulders. Let the room become simple around you. Just walls, air, shadow, and the quiet place where your body can finally stop performing. You have carried many small weights today, perhaps some that had names, perhaps others that were only moods, half thoughts, unfinished conversations, a small pressure behind the eyes, a sentence you wanted to answer better, a task that followed you from 1 hour to the next. But here, in this softer hour, none of those things needs to be solved by force. You do not have to meditate perfectly. You do not have to understand every word. You do not even have to stay awake. The bed is already doing something kind. It is receiving your back without asking for an explanation. It is holding your hips, your knees, your heels, the roundness of your shoulders, the subtle weight of your head. The room temperature meets your skin in its own way, cool enough to remind you of air, warm enough to let the body trust that it may remain. If your jaw has been set against the world, let it unfasten just a little, as if the lower teeth could drift away from the upper teeth like two small boats separating on a dark pond. If your tongue is pressed to the roof of the mouth, let it become heavy. If the space around your eyes has been working, let it smooth out. Nothing needs to be watched so carefully now. The ceiling can be the ceiling. The darkness can be the darkness. The breath can come and go without being improved. The body is allowed to be ordinary. The mind is allowed to become cloudy. The heart is allowed to put down its little bundles one by one, without reporting to anyone, without making a speech, without proving that it deserves the rest it is about to receive. Perhaps there is still a part of you that wants to arrange tomorrow. Check the invisible ledgers, replay the day. Measure yourself against an idea of who you should have been. That part of you has been trying to protect you. It has stayed alert because it believed alertness was love. It has gripped because it believed gripping was safety. So there is no need to fight it. You can thank it silently and let it sit down beside you. In the old teachings, a mind that clings is not an enemy. It is only a hand that has forgotten it can open. Tonight, let the hand remember. Let your fingers soften under the blanket. Let your palms turn inward or upward, wherever they naturally rest. Feel the weight of your arms. Feel gravity gathering them. Gravity is not in a hurry. It has no opinion about your success or failure. It simply knows how to draw tired things home. With every exhale, the shoulders can lose a little of their height. The collarbones can widen. The ribs can make more space for the slow tide of breathing. You may notice the mattress below you more clearly now. Not as an object to think about, but as a quiet support, a patient earth beneath the small weather of your body. There is nothing you need to hold in the chest. There is nothing you need to prove to the pillow. You can let yourself be heavier than you allowed yourself to be all day. If a thought comes and says, "Not yet," there is more to manage. You can hear it kindly and still soften. If a memory comes and says, "Look again," compare again, regret again, you can let it stand at the edge of the room like a visitor whose voice is growing far away. You do not need to answer every knock tonight. Some doors can remain closed until morning. And if thoughts continue, let them continue at the edge of things. A river does not become a river by stopping every leaf. It becomes a river by carrying what arrives and not keeping it forever. In the same way, you can let a thought flow through without climbing inside it. You can hear a memory and not become its servant. You can sense a worry and not bow to it. The body knows many old paths down into sleep, older than language, older than plans. It knows the way a child once surrendered in the back seat of a car, the way an elder dozed beside an afternoon window, the way a traveler slept while rain moved over a tiled roof. Your body has not forgotten. Beneath all the thinking, there is still a simple wisdom in the muscles, a knowledge of warmth, demons. Undressed. Let the forehead soften. Let the small muscles around the nose and mouth release. Let the throat become quiet. Let the heart sit inside the chest like a lamp behind paper, glowing but not straining. You do not have to make yourself peaceful. You can simply stop adding so much effort to the places where peace is already waiting. Perhaps sleep is not something you create tonight. Perhaps it is something you stop blocking. Perhaps it is a lake that has been here all along, and you are only laying down the stones you carried in your pockets. One stone may be the need to control what is already moving by its own causes. One stone may be the ache of comparison, that old habit of turning every life into a scale. One stone may be the bitter weight of what happened before. A resentment or regret that keeps asking to be carried as if carrying could repair it. You can feel the outline of these stones without lifting them. You can let them be near you and still begin to rest. So for now, let the waking world become distant. Phones, doors, dishes, messages, duties, faces, unfinished answers. All of them can remain outside the circle of this bed. You do not need to push them away harshly. You can let them blur, as lights blur through rain on a window. You can allow the edges of the day to become less sharp. There will be stories now, gentle lanterns set one by one along the path. You do not have to remember them. You do not have to learn from them in any heavy way. Let them pass through you like warm tea, like low bells, like breath in a dark room. Some may touch the places where you have tried to control what could not be controlled. Some may touch the ache of comparison, the habit of measuring your own quiet seed against another person's blossom. Some may touch the old bitterness or regret that asks to be carried long after the road has ended. But nothing here will demand that you change quickly. The Dharma of the night is very soft. It does not scold. It waits until the body is ready, then shows the hand how to open. As you listen, you can sink. As you sink, you can receive. As you receive, the mind may grow dimmer, kinder, and less interested in being right. You can let the words become less like information and more like weather. You can let the images come and go. A mountain path, a bowl of tea, rain in the cedars, a single lantern far ahead, small and golden, not asking you to hurry, only showing that the road continues gently into the dark. High in a cedar village where morning fog rested in the hollows like folded silk, there lived a tea maker named Ren, who believed that every hour could be arranged if only the hands were careful enough. His house stood halfway up a mountain, where the stones were damp, the moss was thick, and the spring water came cold from a crack in the rock. Travelers climbed the path to taste his tea because they said it carried the clean breath of the mountain itself. Ren accepted their praise with a bow, yet he rarely felt the happiness others imagined he must feel. He was always listening for what might go wrong. He measured the heat of the kettle by the song of the bubbles, the weight of the leaves by the memory of his fingers, the distance between cups by the width of 3 grains of rice. He dried each bowl with a square of linen, turned the charcoal with a narrow iron rod, and opened the shutters only when the wind came from the east, because eastern wind, he believed, kept smoke from wandering into the ceremony room. If a guest sighed too early, he thought the tea had been too hot. If a guest sighed too late, he thought the tea had been too weak. When a child once laughed outside during a winter gathering, Ren felt the laughter had broken the shape of silence he had prepared. When a merchant praised the view more than the tea, Ren remembered it for months. He told himself this was devotion, this vigilance, this refusal to accept a careless moment. Yet devotion slowly turned into a narrow room. He no longer heard the mountain except as a threat to his arrangements. Rain meant damp charcoal. Wind meant ash. Sudden cold meant slower water. A delay on the path meant the leaves might open too long. Even beauty became something to manage. In autumn, when maple leaves reddened beyond the veranda, Ren swept them away before guests arrived because he feared one might stick to a sandal and be carried into the room. An old nun from a distant hermitage was expected on the day after the harvest moon, and Ren prepared as if the entire value of his life would be measured in that ceremony. He selected a pale clay cup with a glaze like mist, the finest of his collection. He polished the kettle until the firelight swam across it. He arranged chestnuts, dried persimmons, and a single small branch of yellow leaves in a bamboo vase. But at dusk a storm rose from the valley. The air darkened suddenly. Rain struck the roof in hard silver lines. The shutters rattled. Smoke moved the wrong way. A shelf trembled, and the pale clay cup slipped from its place. Ren caught it before it shattered, but a thin dark crack ran from the rim toward the base. Clear as a river seen from above, for a while he could not move. The storm filled the room, and in his palms the cup seemed to accuse him. All night he sat beside the dying fire, holding the damaged bowl, thinking of the nun who would arrive in the morning and see that the ceremony had already failed. He did not notice that the rain smelled of cedar needles. He did not notice how the cracked cup still held moonlight whenever lightning opened the clouds. He noticed only that the world had refused to obey. At sunrise, the old nun arrived with wet hands and bright eyes, carrying no umbrella, only a staff polished by many roads. She bowed to the threshold as if greeting an old friend, and Ren began apologizing before she had removed her sandal. He spoke of the storm, the smoke, the cup, the failed arrangement, the poor conditions, and the discourtesy of serving from a vessel no longer perfect. The nun listened without interrupting. Her silence did not hurry him or comfort him in the usual way. It simply made space for his words to run out. Then she asked to hold the bowl. Ren placed it in her hands with shame. She turned it slowly in the pale light. The crack had darkened during the night, and where it crossed the glaze, it looked less like damage than like a branch seen through fog. She touched it with one finger. "This cup has begun to tell the truth," she said. Ren did not understand. He felt almost irritated. Had she not heard that the cup was broken? The nun asked him to prepare the tea anyway. His hands shook as he laid the charcoal, warmed the water, rinsed the leaves, and poured. The bowl did not leak. Steam rose from it in a white thread outside. Rainwater still dropped from the eaves, each drop landing in a clay jar with a round, hollow sound. The nun drank and closed her eyes. Ren watched her face, waiting for disappointment. Instead, she smiled very slightly, as if the tea had reminded her of something too simple to explain. "You have spent many years making a place for tea," she said at last. "Now let tea make a place for the storm." The words entered Ren slowly. He looked around the room he had tried so hard to perfect. The cedar smell was stronger because of the rain. The air was cooler because of the storm. The cracked bowl was warmer because he had held it all night. The ceremony had not been ruined by life entering it. It had become life. A sudden tiredness passed through him. Not the tiredness of failure, but the tiredness of someone who has been clenching a fist for years and is only now feeling the ache. The nun set the bowl between them. "Care is beautiful," she said. "Control is lonely." Ren lowered his head. He still cared about water, leaves, bowls, timing, silence. Those things did not disappear, but something in him stopped believing that the mountain owed him obedience in exchange for his devotion. In the seasons that followed, he continued to make tea carefully. He repaired the cracked bowl with a thin line of gold lacquer, not to hide the break, but to honor the place where rigidity had opened. When wind entered, he let it enter. When rain changed the taste of the water, he tasted the rain. When guests spoke at the wrong time or laughed too loudly, he noticed the sound as part of the gathering, not as an invasion. And at night, Ren slept more deeply than before, because he no longer lay awake rehearsing how to defend tomorrow from the weather. He had learned that peace did not come from controlling the ceremony. Peace came when the ceremony was allowed to include the whole weather of life. Take a slow breath now, and let the storm in that mountain room grow far away. Let the cracked bowl rest on its shelf, still holding warmth. In a river town, where indigo cloth hung from balconies and dyed water ran in blue threads beside the stones, a young weaver named Mira lived across the lane from her elder cousin Sella. Their looms faced different windows. Mira's window opened toward the riverbank, where children chased white geese. Laundry snapped in the afternoon wind, and boatmen called to one another while pushing through the brown current. Sella's window opened toward the market road, where merchants passed under striped awnings, touching fabric with knowledgeable fingers, speaking of prices, praising tight patterns and rare colors. From the time the cousins were girls, people compared them without meaning harm. Sella's cloth was precise, filled with tiny repeating flowers that seemed to have been counted by stars. Mira's cloth was looser, with soft irregular waves that looked like water when the sun moved over it. At first Mira loved her own weaving. She loved the way her shuttle knocked against the frame, the smell of wet thread, the blue stain that remained under her fingernails no matter how well she washed. She loved to pause in the middle of a row and look out at the river, letting its uneven movement teach her hand. But as Sella's work began to sell for higher prices, Mira started listening at the market. She heard words like refined, disciplined, noble, worthy. She heard a merchant say that Sella's borders were as consistent as temple bells. She heard an aunt say, with an affectionate eye, that Mira's cloth had charm, though charm was not mastery. The word, though lodged in Mira like a splinter. Slowly, the river outside her window became less a companion and more a witness to her inadequacy. She began to pull out her own rows at night, ashamed of their looseness. She tried to copy Sella's flowers, counting until her eyes burned, tightening the threads until the cloth lost its breathing space. When her cousin received a commission for a wedding canopy, Mira congratulated her with genuine love and then went home feeling as if something inside her had been made smaller. She started waking before dawn to practice patterns she did not enjoy. Her shoulders hardened, her hands cramped. Even food lost some taste because she ate while imagining how far behind she had fallen. The river kept moving, silver and brown, but Mira hardly saw it. She measured her days by what another hand could do. At night, she dreamed of looms stretching across the town, every shuttle moving more gracefully than hers. She dreamed of standing in a market while strangers unfolded her cloth and shook their heads kindly, which felt worse than cruelty. One evening, after ruining a length of silk by forcing a pattern she did not love, she folded the cloth over her knees and wept without sound, while the lamps of the town trembled in the river below. The next morning, an old dyer named Aaron came to Mira's doorway with a basket of undyed thread. He had watched both cousins grow. His back was bent from decades of lifting vats, but his eyes were clear and amused, as if he had made peace with the foolishness of dyes, which never became the same color twice. He asked Mira why her loom had become so quiet. She said she was tired. He waited. She said she was tired of making lesser cloth. Iron did not answer quickly. He set down his basket, went to the courtyard, and took 2 bowls from the shelf. Into one he poured water from the well, still and clear. Into the other he poured water from the river, which he had brought in a covered jar, faintly cloudy with silt. Then he dropped a pinch of indigo into each. The dye spread evenly, deepened calm, making the blue so pure it looked almost formal. In the river water, the dye curled in cloudy ribbons, catching bits of silted light, making strange little galaxies before it settled into a softer, shifting color. "Which blue is correct?" he asked. Mira stared at the bowls. The question felt simple, but something in it moved under her ribs. Iran said, "Salah's hands listen to the well. Your hands listen to the river. Why ask the river to stand still?" After he left, Mira sat by the window for a long time. She watched the actual river, not the river in her worry. It carried petals, leaves, a broken reed, a child's paper boat, foam from the dye house, and the reflection of clouds that never stayed long enough to be captured. None of them moved in straight lines, yet all of them belonged to the current. She thought of Selah's flowers and felt, for the first time in many weeks, not envy, but tenderness. Selah had her own window, her own discipline, her own joys and burdens. Mira had been turning another person's gift into evidence against herself, which was a lonely use of beauty. That afternoon she returned to her loom and did not copy the flowers. She wove wide bands of blue with small interruptions of gray and green, letting the pattern loosen where her breath loosened. At first the cloth seemed too simple. Then, in the slant light, it shimmered like evening water. It did not ask to be called better. It did not apologize for being different. Traveler bought it before sunset, saying it reminded him of the road home after rain. Mira smiled, not because she had surpassed Selah, but because she no longer needed to. Later, she visited her cousin and admired the wedding canopy without secretly measuring her own worth against every stitch. Selah, who had been carrying her own quiet pressure to remain precise, confessed that she sometimes envied Mira's flowing lines. They laughed softly, not because comparison was foolish in a simple way, but because it had made each woman blind to the other woman's fatigue. That night, Mira slept to the sound of the river without turning it into a scale. She understood that comparison had made her abandon the only loom she could truly inhabit, and that peaceful sleep returned when she stopped asking her life to become someone else's pattern. Let your own breath move like that river, not straight, not measured against any other breath. It can be exactly as it is, and still belong. Far to the south, where mangrove roots held the shore like dark fingers and the sea changed color with every hour, there was a boatman named Tavo who carried passengers across a narrow channel. His boat was long green, unscarred by salt. Every morning he pushed it from the mud, set his pole into the water, and ferried farmers, monks, fish sellers, children with school slates, and old women carrying baskets of limes. Tavo knew the moods of the channel. He knew where the current twisted, where sandbars hid, where the wind could turn a peaceful crossing into a slow argument. He knew which passengers feared deep water and which pretended not to. He knew how to keep his face calm when lightning gathered beyond the palms. People trusted him because he did not waste words. Yet for 12 years he carried a sentence spoken by his younger brother, as if it were a stone tied inside his chest. The brother had left the village after their father's funeral. There had been debts, a house to repair, a mother who needed care, and grief so thick that even small decisions felt like betrayal. In anger, the brother had said that Tavo was only a boat tied to one bank, never brave enough to enter the open sea. The words had been foolish, thrown in pain. But Tavo kept them polished. He remembered the angle of his brother's mouth, the dust on his sandals, the way the doorframe looked after he had gone. Whenever Tavo saw a ship beyond the channel, he felt the old wound burn. Whenever someone praised his steady work, he heard only the insult beneath it. He imagined speeches he might give if his brother returned. He imagined refusing him passage. He imagined proving, somehow, that staying had not been small. The resentment shaped even his kindness. If a young man spoke of leaving for the city, Tavo became cold. If his wife mentioned writing to the brother, he changed the subject. When his mother died, he sent no message, telling himself that anyone who wanted the open sea could learn news from the wind. At night, after the last crossing, he often sat in his boat long after the tide had gone quiet, ripping the pole and staring toward the dark mouth of the sea. His wife would call from the house, where supper cooled and the lamp waited, but resentment had become a second shore, and Tavo kept ferrying himself back to it. He did not see that the sentence had lasted only a breath in his brother's mouth, while in his own mind it had been given 12 years of food, shelter, and the tension. One dry season, a wandering monk came to the channel carrying a bundle wrapped in faded yellow cloth. He asked for passage after sunset, when the water was copper and the mangroves were full of insect song. Tavo pushed off without conversation. Halfway across, the monk asked why the boat rode lower on one side. Tavo glanced down, alarmed, but saw nothing unusual. The monk smiled and tapped his own chest. "Some cargo is not visible," he said. Tavo frowned, yet the hour was quiet. And perhaps because the passenger was a stranger, he spoke. He told the story of the brother's insult, the funeral, the leaving, the years of bitterness. Once he began, he found that the story had worn a smooth channel through him. Each detail knew when to arrive. Each old injury stepped forward and bowed. The monk listened while the boat slid through bands of red light. When they reached the far bank, he did not step out. Instead, he untied his bundle and revealed 3 stones, smooth and dark, each the size of a fist. "I have carried these from the monastery garden," he said. "They are ordinary stones. But if I keep them in my robe for 12 years, I may begin to call them my identity." He placed one stone in Tavo's hand. It was warm from the cloth, heavier than expected. "Your brother spoke once. You have repeated him every day. Which voice has made you suffer longer?" Tavo looked across the channel. The tide was turning, patient and indifferent, moving water from sea to river, river to sea. He wanted to defend the importance of being wounded. He wanted to say that the monk did not understand family, duty, humiliation, the loneliness of the one who stays. But the stone in his hand had no argument. It was simply heavy. Suddenly he understood the exhaustion of holding what had already happened. The past had struck him once. His own remembering had struck him thousands of times. When the monk stepped onto the bank, Tavo set the stone in the mud instead of returning it. Later, alone in the center of the channel, he whispered his brother's sentence once. Then let the wind take it without answering. Nothing dramatic changed. His brother did not appear. The past did not rewrite itself. But the boat seemed lighter. The channel widened. In the weeks that followed, Tavo noticed how often the old speech rose in him, asking to be rehearsed. Sometimes he still rehearsed it. Sometimes he caught himself and let the pole rest. A letter arrived from a port city. His brother's handwriting had grown cramped. The letter did not explain everything. It did not kneel. It said only that he was older now, that he often dreamed of the channel, that he was ashamed of certain words, and that if Tavo permitted it, he wished to come home for one visit before the rains. Tavo held the letter for a long time. Then he walked to the shore and placed both hands on the green boat. He did not know what forgiveness would look like. He knew only that he was tired of rowing with a stone in his chest. That night he ate supper while it was still warm. And when he slept, his dreams were not of proving himself, but of water moving under moonlight, carrying every insult toward a sea too vast to keep them. Notice if there is any old sentence you have been carrying. You do not need to throw it far, you can simply set it down beside the water and let the night continue. In an inland city of pale walls and apricot trees, a palace scribe named Ily and kept records for the provincial court. His desk stood in a long hall where brushes hung from cedar racks and the smell of ink mingled with dust warmed by the afternoon sun. Ilyn's characters were admired for their balance. Each stroke knew where to begin and where to vanish. Officials trusted him with marriage contracts, land disputes, tax ledgers, poems copied for visiting scholars, and letters that required a hand calm enough not to reveal the tremor of politics. He had been trained to preserve what others said, to give events an line. A date, a seal, a margin. Yet in his private chest, beneath folded winter robes, he kept one letter he had never sent. It was addressed to his mother, who had died 7 winters earlier in a village beyond the Western Pass. When she was ill, she had written asking him to visit. Her letter had been brief because her hands were weak, but she had drawn. In one corner, the little plum flower she used to draw on his childhood lunch packets. Ily and had touched that flower with his thumb for a long time. When the messenger brought it, he had wanted to go. He'd even stood in the courtyard at dawn, looking toward the western road. But the governor was preparing a census, and there were ledgers to reconcile, disputes to copy, names to arrange in columns. Ily believed his presence at court indispensable. He told himself that a delay of 10 days was reasonable. He told himself that responsibility was also a form of love. He wrote a reply promising to come when the ledgers were complete. But before he sent it, a messenger arrived with news of her death. Since then, he had copied thousands of pages for other people, but the unsent letter remained folded in its original sleeve, a small white weight in the dark. During the day, he was composed. He trimmed his brush, ground ink, and made clean characters for births, marriages, punishments, honors, and decrees. At night, he entered a different court, one where he was always the accused. If he had left sooner, if he had ignored the governor, if he had sent one more message, if he had been a better son. Regret became a room with no doors, and he walked there until dawn. He imagined his mother listening for his steps. He imagined the empty road outside her house. He imagined the letter arriving after her breath was gone, though in truth he had never sent it. This made the regret stranger, more circular. He suffered not only for what had happened, but for every version of what had not happened. Even when praised for his discipline, he felt hollow, because no elegant character could cross the distance he had failed to cross. The more orderly his pages became, the more disorderly his heart felt beneath them. One spring, the court invited an elderly calligrapher named Master Yun to restore a set of ancient sutras damaged by smoke. His hand was no longer steady. Sometimes his brush left a faint tremble in the line, and younger scribes whispered that the master had outlived his skill. Ily watched him work with a mixture of pity and irritation. How could a sacred text be trusted to a hand that shook? How could gaps be tolerated where burned characters had disappeared? On the third evening, Master Yun asked Ily to bring fresh ink. The hall was nearly empty. Outside, apricot petals drifted across the courtyard in a mild wind. As Lyn approached, he saw that the old man had left a small blank space where a burned character could not be known. Should we not complete it by inference? Lyn asked. Master Yun shook his head. Missing character should not be filled with vanity. The words landed strangely. Lyn stood very still. Perhaps the old man saw something in his face, because he added, there are places where life burned through the page. We bow there. We do not pretend the paper was never touched by fire. That night, Lyn opened the chest and took out the letter to his mother. His hands trembled more than Master Yun's. He unfolded it and saw the younger version of himself promising a visit that would never happen. For a while the pain rose as sharply as ever. He wanted to argue with time. He wanted to write the page differently and make the ink obey. Then he placed a fresh sheet beside the old letter and sat until the candle burned low. He did not write a defense. He did not describe the census, the governor, the duty, the fear of losing his position. He wrote only the words he had never allowed himself to say plainly. Mother, I was late. I loved you. I am sorry. May this love find you beyond my timing. The characters were not elegant. A drop of water from his eye blurred the final line. At dawn, he carried both pages to the courtyard, where apricot blossoms had begun to fall. He burned them in a small bronze bowl, watching smoke lift through the branches. The regret did not vanish like a trick, but it changed shape. It became grief, and grief could breathe. In the weeks that followed, when Lyn copied damaged sutras, he no longer despised the gaps. He learned to leave space where space was true. He wrote to living relatives more quickly, not from panic, but from tenderness. He walked sometimes beyond the western gate and bowed toward the pass. At night, when the old room of regret appeared, he no longer entered every corridor. He would place one hand on his chest and remember the blank space Master Yun had left without shame. Love, he came to understand, does not become meaningless because it was imperfect. A late bow is still a bow. An unfinished letter can still become smoke. And sleep, which had avoided him for years, began returning quietly when he stopped demanding that remorse build a bridge strong enough to change the past. Breathe gently with that smoke rising through blossoms. Some doors open only when we stop demanding that the past become a different house. Beyond the northern rice fields, where winter cranes stood in flooded paddies and dawn, arrived blue and silver. A gardener named Doran tended the courtyard of a small temple. His task was humble, but he treated it like a kingdom. He swept the gravel into clean arcs, pruned the pines, trimmed the moss around stone basins, and watched the plum trees with an anxious devotion. In that region, the first plum blossoms were said to announce the hidden turning of the year. Pilgrims came in late winter to see the branches flower against the snow. And Doran wanted the temple garden to be remembered as the most beautiful in the valley. He had not always been anxious. As a child, he had loved simply being outdoors, following beetles along walls, smelling soil after rain, cupping fallen petals in his hands. But when he was given charge of the temple garden, praise and responsibility tangled together. A visiting official once said that a neglected garden revealed an neglected mind, or one never forgot it. He began to imagine that every yellowing leaf was a judgment, every crooked branch a public failure. He studied the buds as if his stare could persuade them. He wrapped branches against frost, warmed water before pouring it near the roots, muttered encouragement, then scolded himself for muttering. When a neighboring temple's plum tree opened 3 blossoms before his own, Doran felt a flare of humiliation, so strong he could not eat breakfast. He began rising before the bell, carrying a lantern into the cold, inspecting every bud for progress. Being trees remained silent. Some buds swelled, some stayed tight. One branch cracked under ice, or unbound it with cloth and lay awake that night imagining pilgrims standing before the tree with polite disappointment. He dreamed of forcing petals open with his fingernails and woke ashamed of the dream. The head monk, a woman named Jisho, watched him from the veranda as he moved through the garden, like a worried parent following a child who had not asked to be followed. She saw how careful he was. She also saw how little he received from the beauty already present: frost on the stone lantern, crane tracks near the pond, the faint green returning to moss, low winter sun on the temple bell, or run past all these things as if they were servants failing to prepare the main guest, which was the blossom he had decided must arrive on time. On the morning of a heavy frost, Or found that several early buds had browned at the edges. His face went hot with despair. He went to Jisho and confessed that he had failed the garden. She put on her straw sandals and walked with him to the plum tree. For a long time she said nothing. The sun had not yet risen over the ridge. Frost whitened the moss. Their breath made small clouds. Somewhere inside the temple, a novice coughed and then was still. Finally Jisho asked, "When did the plum tree appoint you master of spring?" Whereon lowered his eyes stung, but her voice was not sharp. It was almost tender. She touched one closed bud with the back of her finger. Your care is useful when it protects life. It becomes suffering when it tries to replace life. The words did not comfort him immediately. He wanted instructions, a remedy, a way to fix the brown buds. Jisho gave him none. She only stood beside him until the bell sounded from inside the temple. The note spread through the courtyard, entered the branches, and disappeared. Or unfelt, perhaps for the first time, how tired he was from commanding what could only be invited. He still watered the roots that day. He still checked the cloth around the cracked branch, but he did so more slowly. He noticed that the tree did not seem ashamed. It did not compare itself to the neighboring temple. It did not hurry because pilgrims might arrive. It simply held winter as long as winter remained in it. Over the next days Oran continued tending the garden. But he stopped inspecting each bud as if it owed him an answer. He swept the gravel without imagining a judge. He let fallen needles remain for one afternoon because they looked beautiful against the frost. He discovered that care could feel like companionship instead of command. One afternoon, when he was not watching, the first plum blossom unfolded. It was small. 5 white petals around a yellow center, no grander than a breath. Oran laughed when he saw it, not because he had caused it, but because he had not needed to. More blossoms came slowly, unevenly, according to warmth, sap, light, and mystery. Some pilgrims came early and saw only buds. Some came later and saw branches full of white. Some missed the season entirely, unbowed to the bare tree anyway. The garden became beautiful, though not on Oran's schedule. That season, he slept deeply after evening bells, because he had learned the relief of being a caretaker instead of a commander. He understood that peace was not making spring arrive. Peace was tending the roots, then letting spring find its own door. Let your body feel the patience of unopened blossoms. Nothing in you has to bloom tonight for rest to be real. In a city famous for bronze mirrors, where sunlight flashed from shop fronts and every alley held the bright round face of polished metal, there lived a dancer named Leon. She had trained since childhood in a style that imitated birds over water. Her wrists were fluid, her steps nearly soundless, and when she turned, the long sleeves of her costume seemed to draw circles in the air. Audiences loved her, but mirrors slowly became her masters. At first she used them to refine a gesture, to see whether her neck leaned too far or her hand opened too soon. A good mirror, her teacher had said, could reveal what pride refused to see. But Lian's looking changed as praise increased. She began seeking reflection everywhere, in tea bowls, dark windows, brass plates carried by servants. Rainwater gathered in the courtyard, the polished side of a musician's flute. She compared the curve of her arm to younger dancers, the brightness of her eyes to painted singers. The praise she received to the praise given to others. The more she looked, the less she inhabited her body. She no longer danced from the soles of her feet or the rhythm of breath. She danced from the imagined gaze of everyone watching. If another performer received flowers, Lian smiled and felt a small blade turn inside. If a critic mentioned her technical skill but not her radiance, she stayed awake repeating the omission. Even compliments became unstable. Beautiful, someone would say. And her mind would ask, more beautiful than whom? Less beautiful than yesterday, beautiful enough to last. At meals, she listened for names. At rehearsals, she watched the teacher's eyes to see where approval landed. The stage, which had once felt like open sky, became a narrow bridge over comparison. One evening, during the spring festival, she made a flawless entrance. The drums were low, the flutes clear, the lanterns warm, but at the side of the stage, in a tall mirror framed with dark wood, she saw another dancer waiting for the next scene. The younger woman's face was calm, almost playful. Lian felt an old panic. Was that ease what she lacked? Was that youth already replacing her? In that small flash of reflection, she left her own body and entered the measuring mind. She forgot the next movement. Only for a heartbeat, but enough. Her sleeve fell wrong. The music continued. No one gasped, yet inside her, the world cracked. After the performance, people still praised her, but she heard praise as concealment. She returned to her room and sat among mirrors until dawn, trying to locate the flaw that would explain why she no longer felt free. Ashamed and sleepless, Lin went before sunrise to the old theater, intending to practice until comparison could no longer defeat her. There she found the stage keeper, an elderly man named Bo, washing dust from the floorboards. He had seen thousands of performances and had outlasted most reputations. He knew the sound of applause welling and vanishing. He knew which stars had once believed the city could not continue without them, and he had swept the same boards after their names were forgotten. Without asking permission, he began covering the rehearsal mirrors with plain cotton cloth. Listen protested that she needed them. Bo wrung out his rag and said, "You need one mirror less than you think." She was too tired to argue. He asked her to dance the opening sequence facing the empty hall. At first she felt blind. Her arms seemed shapeless without confirmation. Her feet sounded too loud. She wanted desperately to lift the cloth and check herself. But the hall was dim and patient. Dust turned in a beam of early light. Somewhere outside, a vendor opened wooden shutters. Bo tapped the rhythm softly on the floor. Little by little, Lan's attention moved downward. She felt the boards under her soles, the muscles along her spine, the breath that rose before each turn. She noticed grief in her chest. Not only fear, but grief for the years she had spent abandoning the inside of her own movement. She danced the sequence again, then again. Each time, without the mirror, she had to listen more carefully to the body itself. The body was not as anxious as the image. The body knew wait, turn, lift and landing. The body knew when a sleeve wanted to float. When the sequence ended, Bo uncovered one mirror. Lin looked and saw herself flushed. Imperfect, alive. Not better than another dancer, not worse. Simply present. Bo said, A mirror is useful for correcting a hand. It is a poor place to live. That night, at the festival's second performance, she still saw other dancers, other flowers, other faces lit by praise. But the old hunger to measure had softened. She let the music enter her ribs. She let her sleeves follow the air. She remembered the empty hall, the covered mirrors, the floorboards receiving her feet without comparison. The audience grew quiet. The deep quiet that comes when people stop comparing and begin receiving. Later in her room, she passed a bronze mirror and bowed to it lightly, as to a useful servant, not a master. Then she turned it toward the wall and slept, feeling her body from within. Years afterward, when younger dancers came to her frightened by others' beauty, she did not tell them never to look. She taught them to look, then return, to correct the hand, then feel the breath, to know that another person's grace was not evidence against their own. And whenever a festival ended, she covered one mirror before sleeping, a small ritual of kindness, leaving the night free of measurement. Let the mirrors of the mind turn gently toward the wall. You can rest without checking how your rest appears. On the eastern coast, where black rocks held tide pools like pieces of sky, a fisherwoman named Suri lived with her daughter in a house smelling of nets, kelp, and wood smoke. Suri had inherited her boat from her mother and her mother's mother before her. She knew the reefs, the moon cycles, the places where silver fish gathered when the water cooled. She knew the different grays of fog and what each one meant. She knew how gulls flew before a change in wind, how rope sounded when it had absorbed too much salt, how a good net felt when lifted through dark water. Yet as seasons changed, the sea grew less predictable. Storms arrived without the old signs. Currents shifted. Some mornings the nets came up nearly empty, littering only with weeds and small crabs. Suri began to speak to the sea as if to a debtor. She cursed the fog, cursed the moon, cursed distant merchants who paid less, cursed her own hands for growing stiff. When her daughter Lena asked questions, Suri answered sharply. When neighbors offered help, she heard pity. Every empty net felt like an accusation. She kept ledgers of weather, wind, bait, and catch, searching for the lost rule that would make the sea obey again. She wrote until the pages smelled of damp ink, north wind, poor catch, half moon, broken net, one current, no sardines, merchant Jun lowered price, dishonest smile. She believed that if she could name every cause, she could corner the sea into fairness. At night she lay awake listening to waves strike the rocks, each crash sounding like a door closed in her face. Lena, who was 12 and had her grandmother's patient eyes, moved quietly through the house, careful not to disturb the anger that sat beside the hearth like a second adult. Lena placed a shell near Suri's bowl at supper, a pink shell polished by tide. Suri barely looked at it. She was calculating how many fish would be needed to repair the roof. Another evening, when Lena asked whether the sea hated them, Suri snapped that the sea did not feel anything. The girl lowered her head, and Suri felt regret, but pride closed around it. By winter, even on calm days, Suri's brow stayed tight. She dreamed of pulling the horizon toward her with a rope. She dreamed of standing in waist-deep water, shouting orders while the tide rose around her. She woke with clenched hands, as if she had been holding the rope all night. One afternoon, after 3 poor catches in a row, Suri found Lena on the beach building small channels in the sand. The tide was coming in. Each time the child shaped a little wall, water entered, softened it, changed it, made a new path. Lena laughed and adjusted her channel. Not offended by the sea's revisions, Suri was about to tell her to come inside, because the wind was cold and there was work to do, when an old memory rose. Her own mother kneeling beside her years before. saying, "A net asks, it does not command." The sentence had seemed ordinary then. Now it moved through her like a tide entering a cave. She sat on a rock and watched Lena's and rivers break and fill again. The sea had never been a machine. It had always been relationship, offering and withdrawing, feeding and refusing, larger than any ledger. Suri still needed to fish. She still needed skill, repair, timing, courage. Letting go did not mean abandoning the boat or pretending hunger was poetry. But she saw that her anger had not brought back abundance. It had only salted the house. It had taught her daughter to speak softly around disappointment. That evening she took her ledgers and sat by the stove. She did not burn them all. Some pages held useful knowledge, and wisdom was not the same as surrendering to chaos. She kept the notes that described wind, reef, net, and season. She tore out the pages where complaint had replaced observation, where she had written the sea into an enemy. Though she burned, watching the paper curl into red light. Then she called Lena to the table and asked about the sand channels. The girl looked surprised, then began describing how water always found the lowest place. Suri listened. The next morning, she invited Lena into the boat. Together they rowed before sunrise. The catch was modest, but the sky opened rose and gold over the black rocks. And Lena hummed while sorting the nets. Suri felt sadness, yes, and uncertainty, but not the same hard war. When the sea gave little, she learned to mend. When it gave more, she learned to receive without clinging. She joined other fishers to share knowledge of changing currents. She taught Lena the old signs and also admitted when the old signs failed. Over time, her sleep deepened, not because life became predictable, but because she stopped trying to drag the tide by force. On difficult nights, she would place both hands open on the blanket and imagine the boat rocking in dark water. The moon did not ask her to approve of its pull. The sea did not ask to be forgiven for being vast. Love, grieve, adapt, and rest inside a world that moved by more causes than one human hand could hold. Feel the tide of breathing now. It arrives by itself, leaves by itself, and asks only that you soften around its rhythm. In a valley of red cliffs where sound traveled a long way, there was a bell maker named Haynal whose bronze bells were hung in temples across 3 provinces. He could hear the character of metal before it cooled. He knew whether a bell would sing bright as winter stars or low as earth after rain, whether its first note would open like a doorway or settle like a stone dropped into deep water. Apprentices feared and admired him, because his standards were exacting and his fearing almost unbearable in its precision. To him, a bell was not only an object, it was a promise to a valley, a way for human beings to gather their attention and remember that time itself can be entered with reverence. The foundry where he worked stood below a ridge of folded rock. In summer the heat inside, it was fierce enough to make the air shimmer over the clay molds. In winter the walls held warmth from the furnaces for days. Bronze arrived in rough ingots wrapped in straw. Charcoal blackened the workers' hands. Cletus settled on the eyelashes. Hammers rang, crucibles glowed, and the whole place breathed in shifts, as if the building itself had lungs. Among the apprentices was a quiet boy named Jay, who swept the floor, carried charcoal, mixed clay, and watched every pour with wide attention. Jay had the kind of focus that made small tasks beautiful. He learned to listen for changes in the color of the melt and to notice how the room smelled just before the metal reached the right temperature. Haynal respected the boy's care, but he did not know how to show it gently. Praise had become rare in him. After years of responsibility, he spoke mostly in corrections. If a mold was too dry, he scowled. If a ladle was lifted too high, he snapped. If a line was crooked by the width of a hair, he made the apprentice redo it. The men in the foundry said he could hear blame in the wind. Haynal would have laughed at that once, but after the summer the flawed bell was cast, he could no longer laugh. It happened during a long humid week when the clay resisted. The fire burned unevenly, and everyone was tired. A temple had commissioned a large bell for the winter festival. The mold was prepared with care. The inscriptions carved cleanly, the cavity dried and checked twice. On the day of the pour, clouds gathered low. The sky threatened rain, but never quite opened. Haynal supervised every movement. He stood close to the furnace, shield shading his eyes, listening to the bronze as it changed from dense dark to liquid gold. Jay adjusted a mold support while Haynal turned to answer a question from one of the older workers. The change was tiny, perhaps no more than a breath. Later, no one could prove whether that moment caused the flaw, but when the bell cooled and was struck for the first time, a faint wavering entered the tone near the end of the note. The bell was still beautiful. In fact, some villagers said the tremble made it warmer, more human, more haunting. But Haynal heard only the flaw. He struck it again and again, then ordered silence because each additional ringing sharpened his shame. He blamed the humidity, the merchant, the clay, the wind, the apprentice who had shifted the support. And finally Jay. The boy bowed and apologized, though he did not know exactly what he had done. That should have been the end of the matter, but Haynal kept the bell in memory like a wound that refused to close. The temple accepted it. The festival came. People gathered under lanterns and the bell's voice rolled through the valley, deep and steady until that slight wavering at the edge, which some listeners never noticed at all. Haynal noticed it every time. He noticed it in the temple report, in the villagers' praise, in the silence after the strike, in the way other bells sounded afterward. He began to carry the flaw as if it were proof of his failure as a master. He could not forget it, and because he could not forget it, he became narrower. Apprentices learned to fear mistakes more than they learned to love craft. Who had once been eager, grew quieter. The foundry still produced good bells, but the air around them was no longer relaxed. Haynal kept telling the same inner story. A single error had corrupted what should have been pure. His own mind heard this story more and more often, until even perfect sounds seemed to accuse him of the one imperfect one. During a drought several years later, the temple with the flawed bell invited Haynal to inspect it before a major festival. He traveled reluctantly, annoyed that the old wound had been summoned. The road climbed through terraces of millet, then through pines, then into the higher valley where the temple stood among rocks and cypress. The bell hung in a tower above the courtyard, bronze darkened by weather, its surface marked by rain, bird droppings, and the touch of many hands over many years. At dusk the monks struck it for evening practice. The sound rolled into the valley, deep bronze. And yes, carrying that faint wavering near the end. Haynal closed his eyes in irritation, but as the note spread, something unexpected happened. The wavering met the cliffs and returned as a trembling echo, layered and tender, like a human voice on the edge of tears. Birds lifted from the trees. Villagers paused on the road. Children stopped quarreling in the courtyard. The monk beside him whispered, "This bell has comforted many people. Its voice sounds like someone who understands imperfection." Haynal opened his eyes. For years he had heard only the flaw because the flaw befriended his anger. He had never listened to what the bell had become in the world. That night, unable to sleep, he walked to the bell tower and found another visitor there. Jay, older now with strong hands, a few gray hairs, and the measured calm of a man who has accepted that his youth no longer needs defending. He had come for the festival, not knowing Haynal would be there. Silence stood between them. At last Jay bowed and said, "Master, I have carried shame for that bell." Haynal felt the familiar speech rising, the one he had polished for years. He was ready to say that Jay had been careless, that the bell's flaw had damaged the standard, that a master cannot afford even a small lapse in the chain of events. But the valley was dark, and the bell hung above them, holding moonlight along its rim. He heard again the echo like a voice forgiving itself. The speech dissolved. He understood suddenly that Jay had not been the only one carrying shame. Haynal had been using the flaw to keep himself from confronting how terrified he was of being ordinary, of making something less than perfect, of admitting that skill does not stop the world from trembling. "I carried blame," Haynal said slowly. It was heavier. Jay looked up, startled, then lowered his head in relief. They stood together until the night insects began their thin music. They did not solve the past. They did not agree on every detail. But they were no longer inside the old courtroom of the mind. In the days that followed, Haynal inspected the bell again. He noticed the wavering, yes, but he also heard the surrounding tone. The breadth of the resonance, the way listeners leaned toward it rather than away from it. He asked monks how the bell changed the mood of meditation. He listened to pilgrims describe how its sound seemed to gather sorrow instead of merely announcing time. He returned to his foundry and became no less careful, but more spacious. Apprentices still learned precision, yet they also learned to listen after the strike, to hear what the world did with what they made. When an error happened, Haynal corrected it, without turning it into a moral verdict. He even began to speak of metal, the way gardeners speak of weather. Something to respect, something to study, never something to command absolutely. That change made the foundry warmer. Jay stayed on for a season and then opened a small workshop of his own. Before he left, Haynal gave him a bell chisel and said only, "Listen beyond the flaw." Jay smiled as if receiving a blessing. In old age, Haynal still heard the tremble in the temple bell whenever he visited, but it no longer opened the old wound. It reminded him that what humans make can still be useful, even if it carries the curve of the hand that made it. He slept better in his final years because he had stopped guarding the injury that made him feel superior to the past. Neither was he. Both had become part of a larger listening. Let the sound of that bell travel away. Even what trembles can become part of a deeper tone. Across a dry plateau where caravan bells clicked under enormous stars, a mapmaker named Samir guided traders between oasis towns. His maps were prized because they included more than routes. He marked wells that tasted of iron, dunes that shifted after spring winds, shrines where travelers could sleep safely, and ravines where echoes confused the ear. He noted where camels stepped more readily at dawn, where the wind sharpened afternoon, where a person who listened carefully might find the smell of water before seeing it. Samir loved maps because they promised that the world could be known before one entered it. After losing his father to a sandstorm in childhood, he trusted lines more than weather, ink more than instinct. His father had vanished in a storm that arrived too quickly for the family to close the shutters. One moment, he was in the yard, tying a rope around the water jar. The next, he was a shape swallowed by white dust. Samir had been too young to understand that storms do not always keep their promises to the horizon. Since then, he had sought safety in planning. He updated his charts obsessively, questioning shepherds, measuring shadows, noting every rumor of a changed track. If a passerby mentioned a collapsed cistern or a thorn patch, he wrote it down 3 times. He feared the desert because it had once taken someone he loved without warning, and fear had become discipline. On clear nights, he spread maps under lamplight and directed the same dune line until his eyes ached. He liked the feeling that every mile had been anticipated. He liked being able to answer questions before they arrived. He liked the way merchants depended on his certainty. And yet the more he trusted the page, the less he trusted his own body. If a breeze shifted unexpectedly, he checked the map. If a cloud covered the moon, he felt anger. If another guide suggested a different route, he heard criticism. The lines had become a fortress, and inside it his grief stayed unexamined. One year, a wealthy caravan hired him to lead a winter crossing from the salt towns to the southern oasis. Samir prepared for weeks. He refined the route, selected water skins, checked camel loads, and marked emergency resting points. He even dreamed of the journey as a kind of proof that grief had not made him weak. Yet 3 days into the crossing, an unexpected storm erased the trail. Dunes rose where his map showed flat ground. Lay well marked reliable had collapsed into sand. The camels grew restless. The merchants looked to him, and his mind clenched around the map as if around a sacred promise. He refused to alter course at first, insisting the well must be nearby, ordering men to dig where his ink said water should be. They dug until their hands blistered. No water came. That night, under a sky crowded with indifferent stars, Samir sat apart from the caravan, staring at the map by lamplight, hating the desert for failing to match the page. He also hated himself for feeling afraid. An older camel driver named Noura approached and sat beside him without invitation. Her face was lined by wind, and she had crossed the plateaus hence before Samir was born. She asked to see the map. He handed it over defensively. She studied it with respect, then placed it on the sand and set a small stone at its center so the wind would not take it. "This is a good memory of the desert," she said. "But tonight we need the desert." Samir wanted to argue. Instead, he watched her rise and walk a little way into the dark. She stood listening, smelling the air, feeling the sand with her feet. Then she bent and picked up a handful, letting it fall through her fingers. When she returned, she pointed not to the map but to the stars. "Your page knows where things were," she said. "It does not know what is breathing now." He said he had spent years making sure no one would be lost because of him. Noura nodded. "And yet here you are, lost inside your certainty." The words stung because they were gentle. He looked at the map and felt how much of his life had been spent trying to prevent the old storm from ever happening again. He had chosen control in the name of grief. He had become a man who trusted lines because the sky had once turned traitor. Dawn came quietly. Noura led them toward a line of birds so faint Samir would never have marked it. The birds drew them to a shallow basin where moisture gathered under reeds. It was enough to refresh the camels and refill the most urgent skins. The caravan survived. For the rest of the journey, Samir kept his maps, but he unfolded them differently. He saw that ink was not control, it was conversation. A map could guide the hand, but it could not command the dune, the storm, the hidden water, the living hour. He began asking the camel drivers what they smelled in the air and what their knees felt beneath them. He learned that experience was not humiliation. It was another kind of chart, one that changed with the weather. When they reached the oasis city, he added a note to the margin of his master map. When the page and the wind disagree, bow to the wind. He also drew a blank square in one corner, as if to honor what could not yet be known. Years later, his maps became even more valued because they left room for uncertainty. Merchants praised them for their practical humility. Young guides came to learn from him, and he told them to mark the reliable wells, yes, but also to mark the signs of doubt. he told them to listen to elders. 2 camels, 2 clouds, to the way he alters the air above stone. In his own heart, he slowly learned to live with the death of his father without trying to make the whole desert apologize for it. The storm could not be revised. What could be revised was the way he held the story. When memory itself began to shift like sand, Samir did not panic as he once might have. He would wake at night unsure of a name, a date, a room, and instead of fighting, he placed a gentle inward stone on the page of his mind and waited for the living desert to speak. Sleep came more easily then, because he no longer mistook preparation for possession. He had learned that even the best map is only a bow offered to the unknown. It is useful to carry, but foolish to worship. And the desert, which had once seemed an enemy, became a place of vast listening. The stars did not promise certainty. They promised only that a traveler who remained humble could still find the next water, the next shelter, the next good dawn. Let the map fold closed for tonight. The body knows a path downward that the thinking mind does not need to draw. Near a bamboo forest where rain made green music for days at a time, a widow named Aya lived in a small house with a pear tree and a narrow porch. Her 2 sons had grown and gone to distant cities. They wrote when they could, sent money when harvests were poor, and visited in alternating years with tired smiles and restless children. Aya loved them fiercely, but love had become tangled with expectation. She imagined the lives they should live, the wives they should cherish more visibly, the traditions they should keep, letters they should write without being reminded. When they were young, she had known how to feed them, wash them, scold them, and hold them through fever. She knew the weight of their sleeping bodies, the smell of their hair after rain. The way one son bit his lower lip when he was about to cry and the other pretended not to be afraid. Now her air had nowhere simple to go. It turned into advice, then worry, then quiet resentment when advice was not followed. She saved every brief letter and read them for what was missing. Why did one son mention his work but not his health? Why did the other send a festival gift but not promise a visit? Why did neither ask enough about her own days? During rainy nights, Aya lay awake listening to bamboo knock against bamboo, rehearsing conversations in which her sons finally understood how lonely she had been. She would tell them how many dinners had cooled in silence, how many birthdays had passed with only a short phone call, how their children knew her as a face on a screen. Yet when they did visit, she corrected their clothes, their manners, their children's noise, and afterward wondered why they seemed relieved to leave. Her heart wanted closeness, but her hands kept arranging the people she loved until they could not rest near her. Her sons, who had once run to her for every answer, now came carrying the weight of their own families, their own exhaustion, their own private storms, and she met them at the door with all the old expectations sitting on her shoulders like another set of arms. She called this devotion. In truth, it was grief trying to manage the future. On the nights when the rain was heavy, she often opened the chest where she kept festival photographs. She looked at the pictures of her sons as boys and felt time as a kind of theft. She wanted the current family to behave like the remembered family, and because they could not, she felt abandoned. The bamboo outside kept striking in the wind, 2 stems touching, separating, touching again. Aya listened and did not yet understand the lesson it offered. One monsoon afternoon, Aya went to the temple to complain to the abbess, a small woman with a shaved head and a laugh like dry leaves. Aya spoke of sons who forgot, daughters-in-law who changed customs, grandchildren who preferred city sweets to pear cakes, and the ache of being left behind. She spoke until even her own words sounded tired. The abbess listened while rain streamed from the eaves. Then she handed Ai a bamboo cup and asked her to fill it from the rain barrel. Ai did. The abbess said, "Keep pouring." Water rose to the rim, spilled over her fingers, and splashed onto the stones. Ia stopped, annoyed. "It is full," the abbess smiled. "Yes, when a cup is full of how others should be, where can they place who they are?" Ia looked at the overflowing cup. The rain was cool on her hand. She wanted to defend herself. Had she not sacrificed? Had she not loved? Had she not given years' labor, meals and worry? But beneath the defense was a grief so tender she nearly set the cup down. She saw, not all at once, that she had been asking her sons to return not only to her house, but to earlier versions of themselves, boys small enough to fit inside her certainty. She had been trying to love grown men as if they were still shaped by the same needs and the same obedience. The abbess did not lecture her. She only pointed to a line of ants crossing a stone and said that even ants know when to change the path around a branch. At home, Ia took out their letters again. Instead of reading for absence, she read for presence. A mention of a new job, a child's drawing, a joke, a clumsy line of gratitude. Money sent quietly, travel planned with difficulty. The letters had not been empty. Her wanting had been too loud to hear them. She wrote back more lightly. She asked real questions. She offered advice only when invited, and sometimes not even then. When her sons visited, she let the grandchildren make crooked pear cakes and did not correct the shape. She let the boy from the city wear his shoes in the wrong place once and simply moved them later. The house became noisier, less orderly, and warmer. On rainy nights, she still missed the years when her children slept under her roof. But longing no longer hardened into control. She could love them as grown men moving through weather she could not choose. She could let them disappoint the version of mothering she had once imagined and still remained deeply, quietly their mother. Later, one son called to ask how she was truly sleeping. The question was simple, but Ia nearly cried because it was no longer being asked to gain permission. It was being asked to know. She told him she slept better when she did not rehearse every future conversation. He laughed softly and said his own mind did the same thing. That small honesty opened a new door. Over the months that followed, Ia found herself less interested in keeping score. She no longer counted visits like promises owed to her. She noticed instead the shape of each son's fatigue. The way one always phoned before a storm and the other sent pictures of his children in winter coats. She felt their distance without turning it into punishment. She also felt her own age, which no longer seemed like exile. It was simply the weather of her years, and because her heart had stopped standing guard at the door of the past, sleep entered more freely, soft as rain filling an open barrel. Now, let that rain become quieter, and let the mind turn from counting what was missing toward the simple warmth of what is here. You have listened to people who were tired in different ways, though none of them needed to be judged for their tiredness. One held a cup too tightly because he loved order and feared the storm. One measured her hands against another's gift until her own river nearly disappeared. One repeated an old wound until the voice that hurt him had become his own daily companion. One tried to write the past into a kinder shape and learn it to bow before the places where paper had burned. One waited for blossoms as if spring were a servant. One lived in mirrors until the body itself felt far away. One argued with the sea. One with a bell. One with the wind. One with the changing lives of the people she loved. Different roads, different rooms, different weather. Yet underneath them all was the same tender exhaustion, the exhaustion of asking life to become small enough for the mind to control. And perhaps you know some part of that exhaustion, perhaps not in the same form, not with a cracked bowl or a loom or a boat or a map, but in your own quiet way. Perhaps you have tried to arrange the feelings of others before sleeping, as if your mind could enter their hearts and make everything safe. Perhaps you have compared your path to someone else's path and felt your own breath become thinner. Perhaps you have replayed a sentence, an apology, a disappointment, an absence, a mistake, and carried it through the evening like a stone that no one else could see. There is no need to be ashamed of this. The mind grips because it wants to protect the heart. The mind measures because it wants to know where it belongs. The mind replays because it wants pain to become meaningful. These are understandable movements. They are not failures. Yet tonight, they are no longer necessary in the same way. Tonight, the body can teach the mind another language, not a language of argument, a language of weight, a language of warmth, a language of sinking. In this language, control becomes the joy releasing by one small degree. Comparison becomes the eyes resting behind closed lids, no longer searching for a mirror. Old resentment becomes the hands opening on the blanket. Regret becomes a softness behind the breastbone. A war make allowed to breathe without being turned into a sentence. You do not have to decide what you are letting go of. You do not have to name it perfectly. You can simply let the body begin. Let the bed become the ground of practice. Let the pillow become a quiet teacher. Let gravity be the old patient monk who never raises his voice. It does not explain impermanence. It lets your shoulders feel it. It does not lecture you about humility. It draws your tired limbs downward until they remember that not everything can be carried. So begin at the crown of the head. Imagine the top of the head opening not upward with effort, but downward with relief, as if a cool bowl of moonlight has been poured very slowly over the scalp. Let that coolness spread into the hairline, the temples, the small places where the day collected. The scalp does not need to hold thoughts in place. The forehead does not need to remain lifted toward tomorrow. Let the forehead smooth from the center outward, slowly, as if a soft cloth were moving over still water. The little lines of concentration can fade. The space between the eyebrows can widen. The eyebrows themselves can become heavy, no longer raised in question, no longer drawn together around a problem. Behind the eyes, let all the inner pictures dim. The faces you have been watching in memory can move back. The rooms you have been rearranging can blur. The road ahead can lose its sharp horizon. You do not have to keep seeing everything clearly at night. Night is allowed to be unclear. Sleep is built from blessed unclarity. Let the eyelids rest over the eyes like thin petals closing at dusk. Let the eyeballs settle deeper in their sockets. Let the looking part of you rest. It has looked enough. It has searched enough. It has compared enough. It has checked the mirror, the map, the letter, the tide, the expression on another person's face. Now it can stop. Even if a picture appears, it can be soft. Even if a thought appears, it can arrive without brightness. The eyes can become to quiet pools under leaves, dark, untroubled, holding the sky without trying to keep it. Let the cheek soften, and let that softness move into the small muscles around the nose and mouth. So much of the day lives here. In expressions you gave to others, expressions you withheld, expressions you prepared before a conversation even began. The face can become less social now. It does not need to please the room. It does not need to show strength. It does not need to hide tenderness. Let the lips rest. Let the corners of the mouth release downward or upward, wherever they naturally fall. Let the jaw unhook again, gently, More gently, as if the hinge of the jaw has been wrapped in warm cloth. The jaw may have tried to hold control for you. It may have held back words. It may have held in anger. It may have bitten down on fear, on comparison, on the wish to answer life perfectly. You can thank it. Then you can let it loosen. The lower jaw can hang with a quiet heaviness. The teeth do not have to touch. The tongue can rest low in the mouth, broadened warm, no longer pushing towards speech. Let's saliva gather or not gather. Let swallowing happen when it happens. Nothing in the mouth has to be managed. Now feel the throat. The throat is a passage. It has carried names, apologies, explanations, requests, prayers and silence. It has held words you said too quickly and words you never said at all. Tonight, let the throat become warm water. Imagine every unsent sentence dissolving there, not erased, not mocked, just softened. Words can become water. Water can move downward. If you have been trying to explain yourself to someone in your mind, let that explanation become a small stream. If you have been trying to win an old argument, let the argument lose its edges in the stream. If you have been waiting for someone to finally understand, let the waiting become a mist that lifts and thins. You do not have to force forgiveness. You do not have to pretend that what hurt did not hurt. You do not have to approve of everything that happened. Letting go is not approval. It is the hand unclenching around the coal that burned it. It is the throat no longer rehearsing the speech that keeps the wound awake. It is the body saying, "Not tonight, dear mind, not now." Let the neck soften. The front of the neck, the sides, the back. The cords and tendons can loosen. The base of the skull can grow heavy. Imagine a line of warmth moving from behind the ears down into the shoulders. It carries away the need to keep watch. It carries away the feeling that sleep must wait until everything is settled. Everything is never perfectly settled. Rivers still move, children still grow, bells still tremble. Weather still changes, but the body can rest within an unsettled world. The body can be held even while life remains unfinished. Let the shoulders receive this. Let them fall away from the ears. Let them drop like wet cloth from a line when the pins are removed. The shoulders have tried to be a roof over everyone. They have lifted in readiness. They have tightened in responsibility. They have made small armor around the heart. Now the armor can warm and soften. The right shoulder can sink. The left shoulder can sink. The shoulder blades can spread on the mattress like two leaves resting on dark water. Between them, the upper back can release. You do not need to carry the weather of the whole mountain. You do not need to hold the tide. You do not need to keep the map open. You can let the support beneath you take more of your weight. More than that, even more. Let the bed surprise you with how much it can receive. There is no ceremony to protect now. No performance to perfect. No one is asking your shoulders to prove devotion by staying tense. Let the arms become heavy. Upper arms. Elbows for arms, wrists, palms. Fingers. Feel the right arm as a long quiet river of weight. Feel the left arm as another river, meeting the bedding, slowly losing its current. The hands are places of doing. They hold cups, tools, phones, steering wheels, bags, letters. Other hands, old stones, imagined ropes around tides that will never be pulled. Tonight the hands can remember another purpose. They can receive. They can rest. Let the palms open naturally, even if only in feeling. If they are turned downward, let them feel the surface beneath them. If they are turned upward, let them hold the darkness like a bowl. Let the fingers uncurl one by one in your imagination. Thumb, index finger, middle finger, ring finger, Little finger, each finger releasing a different small burden. The thumb releases the need to fix. The index finger releases the need to point toward what should have happened. The middle finger releases the hidden anger that no longer wants to sleep inside the bones. The ring finger releases the ache of attachment, the wish that love could remain in one shape forever. Little finger releases the smallest comparisons, the ones so ordinary you almost do not notice them. The quick measuring of your body, your pace, your success, your rest, your worth. Let all of that soften through the fingertips into the bedding. Nothing has to be pushed. Imagine the burdens becoming warm sand. The sand flows from the palms and disappears into the dark. Now feel the chest. The chest can be a difficult place because it is where the heart stories gather. It may hold the wish to be understood. It may hold tenderness that had to become practical. It may hold grief that became planning because planning felt less frightening than grief. Place your attention there lightly, as if laying a small cloth over a sleeping child. No pressure, no demand. The breath enters, the breath leaves. Let the ribs widen without effort. Let the breastbone soften. Let the heart be a lamp behind paper. It does not need to shine brightly. It does not need to become pure before resting. It can be tired and still be worthy of kindness. It can be confused and still be allowed to slow. It can love imperfectly and still be love. Let the breath move around the heart like warm water around a stone in a stream. The stone does not need to be lifted. The water simply moves, and over time the edges become smooth. Perhaps an old sadness is there. Let it be there as weather. Perhaps a resentment is there. Let it be held without feeding it. Perhaps regret is there, asking to review the page again. You can whisper inwardly, tomorrow if needed, not tonight. Tonight the page can close. Tonight the letter can become smoke. Tonight the bell can ring and fade. Let the lungs do their quiet work. They do not compare one breath to another. They do not demand applause for continuing. They simply receive and release, receive and release. The body has always understood the teaching. It has never kept an inhale forever. It has never chased an exhale once it was gone. The breath is the little Dharma repeated all night. Not in words, but in movement. Take what arrives. Let it nourish. Let it leave. Rest in the space after it leaves. Let the upper chest soften, the middle chest soften, the lower ribs soften. Let the sides of the ribs expand into the blanket. Let the back ribs feel the mattress beneath them. If the breath is shallow, let it be shallow. If it is deep, let it be deep. There is no better breath somewhere else. There is only this one, quietly doing enough. Now let the softness move down into the belly. The belly may have held the day's alarms. It may have tightened before messages, before decisions, before the memory of someone else's disappointment. It may have worked hard to digest not only food, but tone, silence, expectation, uncertainty. Let the belly have more room. Let it rise if it wants to rise. Let it fall if it wants to fall. Let it be round, hollow, warm, cool, restless, quiet, whatever it is. There is no need to make the belly look peaceful. It only needs to be allowed. Imagine the center of the body becoming a bowl of warm water. Into this bowl, all the sharp pieces of the day can be placed. The little embarrassment, the unfinished duty, the comparison that flickered when you saw someone else's life, the worry about someone you love, the old resentment that promised to keep you safe, but only kept you awake. Drop each one into the warm water without counting. They do not sink with a sound. They soften as they enter. The water grows cloudy. Then still, the lower back can release. The spine does not need to hold you upright now, one vertebra at a time. From the neck through the mid-back, from the mid-back through the lower back, From the lower back into the sacrum, everything can feel supported. The body can become horizontal in spirit as well as in shape. Horizontal means there is no ladder to climb, no rank to protect, no higher and lower self, no better sleeper somewhere ahead, no worse version of you behind, just the length of your body on the bed, equal with itself, equal with the night. Let the hips sink. The hips are deep. They carry the weight of standing, walking, waiting, bracing. They carry old readiness. They carry roads. Let them become heavy, ancient, close to earth. Let the pelvis settle as if it were a smooth stone at the bottom of a warm pond. Nothing needs to move it. Nothing needs to lift it. Let the thighs soften. The right thigh heavy and warm. The left thigh heavy and warm. The large muscles can release the effort of going forward. You do not need to go forward right now. You do not need to arrive at tomorrow before tomorrow arrives. The knees can soften. Those quiet hinges of humility. They bend because the body was never made of rigid certainty. Let the backs of the knees loosen. Let the calves grow heavy. The ankles can release. The feet, which have carried you through so many visible and invisible roads, can finally stop traveling. Let the soles spread. Let the toes UNCURL. If the toes hold the day like small fists, let them open. If the arcas are tired, let the mattress receive their memory of ground. Imagine warmth pouring down through the legs, through the heels, out through the soles into a dark earth beneath the bed. Down goes the need to control. Down goes the need to compare. Down goes the need to carry the old hurt into another hour. Not thrown away violently, not denied, simply allowed to drain downward, like rainwater leaving the roof after the storm has passed. From the crown to the toes, the body can become less like a person trying to manage life and more like warm water poured slowly into a dark bowl. Heavier, softer, lower. You may feel yourself descending by tiny degrees, not falling, not losing anything important, only settling into the place that has been waiting beneath the noise. Let thoughts pass overhead like distant birds you do not need to count. Let memories pass under a bridge without being followed. Let future plans remain folded, dry and untouched, until morning light. You can be unfinished and still rest. You can be imperfect and still be held. You can be loved by the quiet without earning it. Stay with this heaviness a little longer, not as something to examine, but as something to receive. Let the whole body be taught by weight. I thought may say that letting go should feel dramatic, like a door thrown open, like a chain breaking, like a sudden white light in the mind. But deep release is often quieter than that. It is often the small space between the teeth. It is the palm softening when no one sees. It is the shoulders learning that vigilance is not the same as love. It is the chest feeling safe enough to ache without turning the ache into a plan. Let yourself learn the smaller release. Let the forehead release the idea that it must solve life from above. Let the eyes release the habit of searching for comparison. Let the ears release the old need to listen for danger in every tone. If there are sounds in the room, they can belong to rest. I hum, a distant car, a pipe, a footstep, are moving. The small ordinary sounds of a world continuing without requiring your control. You can let each sound be like a drop of water falling into a deep well. It appears. It disappears. The well remains dark and still. Let the cheeks release the effort of presenting yourself. Let the mouth release the aftertaste of explanation. Let the tongue become quiet, as if all the words of the day are now leaves floating on a pond at night. They can drift to the far side. They do not need to be gathered. They do not need to be burned or hidden or defended. The throat can remain open. The neck can remain easy. The shoulders can continue sinking. And if they rise again, they can sink again. Nothing is lost by beginning again. This is how the body practices. It softens, tightens, notices, softens. It does not scold itself for tightening. It simply returns as a stream returns around stones, as mist returns to the valley. As sleep returns when the mind grows tired of standing guard. Let the upper back widen. Let the space between the shoulder blades become warm and broad. Imagine that all the roles you carried today have been unfastened from that place. The role of the one who must know. The role of the one who must respond quickly. The role of the one who must stay agreeable, capable, alert, impressive, useful, unhurt. Let those roles slide down like coats from a hook. They can be picked up in the morning if they are truly needed. Tonight, the body under the coats is enough. The simple breathing body is enough. Let the breath come into the back as well as the front. Let the ribs behind the heart feel the mattress. Let the whole upper body become wider than the story you told about yourself today. Wider than success. Wider than failure. Wider than the comparison that made you contract. You do not have to win the day now. You do not have to correct the day. You can let it be a day that happened, a day that changed you in small ways and then passed into evening. There is kindness in letting a day end. There is kindness in not dragging it by the sleeve into the bed. Let the chest grow even more spacious, not bright, not excited, simply spacious. Sometimes the heart thinks that if it softens, it will lose what matters. It fears that letting go of control means neglecting care. It fears that letting go of comparison means becoming invisible. It fears that letting go of resentment means betraying the pain that once needed protection. But the heart can soften without abandoning wisdom. It can rest without forgetting love. It can release the grip and still remember what is true. Imagine the heart as a small room after a long day of visitors. Some visitors came with worries, some with demands, some with praise that felt unstable, some with silence that hurt, some with memories, carrying boxes, opening drawers, leaving papers everywhere. Now the visitors have gone. The room is not perfectly tidy, and it does not need to be. The lamp is low, the chair is warm, eye window is slightly open. Night air enters. Let that heart room breathe. Let worry leave through the window as a thin gray thread. Let comparison leave as a mirror carried quietly into another room. Let resentment leave as a stone set outside the door. Let regret leave as an old letter folded gently and placed on a shelf where it no longer needs to be read in the dark. The heart room becomes simple, not empty in a lonely way, empty in a restful way. Space around the lamp, space around the chair, space for breath to move. Place your attention at the center of the chest and imagine warmth there, no larger than a candle flame at first. It does not have to become a blaze. A small warmth is enough. Let it spread to the ribs. Let it spread to the sternum. Let it spread into the upper back, into the shoulders, into the arms. This warmth is not excitement. It is permission. Permission to be tired. Permission to stop rehearsing. Permission to stop comparing the shape of your rest to anyone else's rest. Permission to be a person with unfinished lessons and still sleep. If emotion rises, let it rise slowly. It can be held inside the warmth. If nothing rises, that is also fine. Emptiness can be held. Quiet can be held. The breath can enter the warm place and leave the warm place. It can be small. It can be uneven. It can be almost unnoticed. The body is not asking for a performance. It is inviting a descent. Let the descent continue through the chest into the solar plexus, that tender place where control often gathers, where the body braces before bad news, before criticism, before the possibility of being misunderstood. Let this place soften as if wrapped in warm cloth. You do not need to prepare for every outcome while lying here. You do not need to pre-answer every question. You do not need to scan the future for every possible hurt. The future is not in this bed. Only the body is in this bed. Only breath is in this bed. Only this warm, ordinary, breathing life is here, and for now. It is enough. Let the belly become deeper, quieter, less guarded. Imagine that the belly is a valley after rain. Mist rests slow between the trees. The soil is dark and soft. Water moves underground where no one needs to see it. This is a good image for the parts of you that heal without being watched. Not all repair happens in thought. Some repair happens when the muscles stop tightening around the same old story. Some repair happens in digestion, in warmth, in sleep, in the invisible work of the nervous system when it finally believes the room is safe enough. Let the belly know that it is safe enough now. Let the navel soften. Let the lower belly widen. Let the sides of the waist release. If there is a band of tightness around the middle, imagine that band made of old rope, wet from rain, slowly loosening fiber by fiber. It may have been tied from responsibility. It may have been tied from fear. It may have been tied from years of trying not to need too much. Now the knots can soften without being cut. Warm rain falls on them. They loosen because they are tired. They loosen because the night is patient. The lower back can feel that same rain. The spine can become a dark path through trees, descending gently. Each vertebra is a small stone on the path. The stones do not need to be polished. They only need to be stepped over slowly by awareness. Down through the back of the heart, down through the middle back, down through the lower back, down into the sacrum. Feel the weight of the pelvis again. Let it be heavy in the most peaceful way. The pelvis is a basin. It holds old walking, old sitting, old waiting, old bracing, old survival. Let warm water gather there. Let it cover the stones at the bottom. Let it cover the names of the things you have tried to manage. If the mind reaches for one of those names, let the name sink. Control sinks first, perhaps not as punishment, but as relief. It is tired. It has worked all day, perhaps for many years. It sinks into the warm basin and becomes less sharp. Then comparison sinks. It no longer has to look sideways. It no longer has to ask who is ahead, who is behind, who is more loved, who is more accomplished, who is more peaceful, who is aging better, who has made fewer mistakes. It sinks and the water covers it. Then, the old hurt sinks. The resentment, the regret, the repeated sentence, the scene replayed at night, the face you cannot quite forgive, the version of yourself you cannot quite forgive. It sinks too. The warm water does not argue with it. The warm water does not say it was nothing. It simply holds it until the edges blur. Let the hips spread into the mattress. Let the floor of the body relax. Let the deep muscles that hold readiness soften. The body does not have to be ready for battle. It does not have to be ready to run. It does not have to be ready to defend an identity built from pain. It can be ready for sleep. That is enough. Ready for sleep. Ready for distance. Ready for the strange mercy of not thinking for a while. Down into the thighs now. Heavy right thigh. Heavy left thigh. The thighs carry you forward, but they can stop. Let them stop. Let them be still rivers under a winter sky. Let the knees rest. The knees know bending. They know that strength is not only straightness. Let them teach the mind to bend a little. Let the calf soften. Let the ankles loosen, let the heels grow heavy. Let the feet become quiet at the end of the body, like two small boats drawn up on shore. You may notice now that awareness itself is slowing. It does not need to move quickly from place to place. It can wander like lantern light along the corridor, touching one wall, then another, not needing to illuminate the whole house at once. Let it wander over the body again in its own time. Head soft, face quiet, throat open, shoulders low, arms heavy, hands loose, chest warm, deep, hips sinking, legs still, feet quiet. If any part remains awake or tense, do not make it wrong. Let that part be the last lamp burning in a temple after evening practice. It can burn a while, it can be respected. It can grow dim when it is ready. Perhaps the mind still brings an image of the day. Let it be faint. Perhaps a concern appears for tomorrow. Let it remain folded. Perhaps a person appears in memory. Let them be held by the same night that holds you. You do not need to reach toward them from the bed. You can love without reaching. You can care without tightening. You can wish well without controlling the outcome. This is a very gentle form of prayer, almost too quiet to call prayer. It is the heart saying, may things be held by causes larger than my worry. May those I love be carried by conditions I cannot see. May I stop confusing tension with devotion. Let that wish move through the body like warm breath, not upward into thought, downward into sleep. Down through the throat, down through the chest, down through the belly, down through the hips, down through the legs, down through the feet. The body becomes a path for kindness to descend, and as kindness descends, the self that must manage everything becomes less solid. It becomes like ink in water, spreading, thinning. No longer needing the hard outline. You are still here. You are safe enough, but the sharp idea of you, the one who must solve, compare, defend, remember, perform and prepare, can grow blurry. There is relief in blurring. There is relief in not being so sharply defined. Sleep loves soft edges. Dreams enter where edges soften. Let the edges of the body meet the bed. Let the edges of thought meet the dark. Let the edges of the heart meet the quiet and find that they do not need to be guarded so fiercely. If the breath is very soft now, let it be soft. If it is still uneven, let it be uneven. A peaceful night does not require a perfect breath. A peaceful heart does not require a perfect past. A peaceful body does not require a perfect day. Rest is not a reward given only to those who understood everything. Rest is a natural returning. Leaves return to soil. Rain returns to river. Sound returns to silence. Breath returns to breath. The mind returns, little by little, to the place before the story began. Let yourself return, not backward in time. Downward in depths, down beneath the commentary, down beneath the measuring, down beneath the old need to keep watch at the gate. You can imagine yourself lying beside a wide, dark lake. The surface is almost still. There is no moon at first, only a faintness in the sky. Then the water begins to show a pale reflection, not bright, just enough to reveal that the lake has been there all along. Around the lake are trees. They do not compare their heights. They do not apologize for their crookedness. Some roots hold stone. Some roots hold mud. Some branches are broken. Some are full. All of them belong to the dark outline of the shore. Let your thoughts be trees at the edge of the lake, present but not central. The water is central now. Stillness is central. Your body is the lake. Your breath is the faint movement on its surface. Each exhale makes the water smoother. Each inhale brings a little night air over it. If a leaf falls, It makes a small ring. Then the ring widens and disappears. I thought is like that. I feeling is like that. I memory is like that. It touches the surface, and then the surface receives it. Nothing has to be removed for the lake to be still. Stillness is not the absence of every ripple. It is the willingness of water to receive and settle again. Let the body receive and settle again. Let the mind receive and settle again. Let the heart receive and settle again. Now the lake grows darker. The trees become less distinct. The sky lowers. The bed beneath you is the earth beside the lake, and the blanket is night air made gentle. You can rest beside this water. You can let the watcher sit down. You can let the guard lean against a tree and close his eyes. You can let the old planner fold the map and place it under a stone. You can let the one who compares turn away from the shining surface and feel the ground instead. You can let the one who remembers pain place the stone at the shore and hear it settle into shallow water. Then there is only the lake and the breathing and the dark. Allow everything now to become simpler. There is no need to follow the teachings back to their stories. There is no need to remember which burden was released first. It may be that nothing has been released completely. Till the body can rest. Let this be enough. Partial release is enough. A single softened muscle is enough. One breath without argument is enough. One moment of not measuring is enough. Sleep is made of such small permissions. It does not arrive as a conquest. To others in the spaces where effort has thinned, let effort thin. Let the head be heavy. Let the back be wide. Let the breath be low. Let the heart be warm. Let the hands be quiet. Let the belly be loose. Let the hips be deep. Let the legs be still. You may feel that you are floating and sinking at the same time, floating in darkness, sinking into support. This is fine. The body knows how to drift downward. The mind does not need to steer. Imagine a warm current under the bed, slow and steady, carrying away the last bright scraps of thought. It carries the unfinished messages. It carries the old comparisons. It carries the imagined judgments. It carries the repeated scenes. It carries the need to decide whether you have let go properly. Even that can go. You do not need to check your own surrender. You do not need to evaluate your peace. Let the current carry the evaluator too. Gently, without resistance, the one who asks, "Am I doing this right?" can become drowsy. The one who asks, "Will I sleep soon?" can become drowsy. The one who asks, "Have I forgiven enough, changed enough, understood enough?" can become drowsy. All these inner voices can lie down in a row like travelers in a quiet inn after rain. Their bags are by the door. Their shoes are drying. No one needs to continue the journey tonight. The fire is low. The floor is warm. Outside. The road is dark, and that is not a problem. The road can wait. Morning can wait. The world can wait. Let the body feel this waiting not as delay, but as mercy. Nothing urgent is required inside this breath. Nothing urgent is required inside the next breath. The breaths can become small rooms, each one dim and sufficient. Enter this breath. Leave it. Enter the next. Leave it. The doors open and close without sound. And now the room itself begins to soften around you. The corners are less defined. The ceiling is farther away. The objects near the bed are losing their names. You're only shapes, only shadows, only part of the hush. You are not separate from the hush in any hard way. The hush touches the blanket touches the body touches the breath touches the mind touches the edge of sleep. Everything is touching softly. Nothing is pressing. Nothing is pulling. If you can feel the weight of the blanket, let it be a quiet hand. If you can feel the pillow, let it be a small cloud under the head. If you can feel the mattress, let it be earth without demands. Let your awareness spread through the whole outline of the body, then become less interested in the outline. The body is here, and also becoming less sharp. The feet are far away, the hands are far away, the face is far away, the center is warm and low. Let the warmth gather then dim. Let the dimness gather then deepen. Perhaps a final thought rises. It may be about the stories, or tomorrow, or nothing important at all. Let it rise slowly, like smoke from a temple roof at dusk. Let it thin as it rises. Let it become air before it finishes explaining itself. The mind does not need the last word. The body can have the last softness. The breath can have the last movement. The night can have the rest. Let the three old burdens appear now only as shapes at the edge of a path, not as instructions, not as accusations. The first shape is the wish to control. Perhaps it looks like a closed hand. Perhaps it looks like a rope, a ledger, a calendar, a locked door, a cup held so carefully that the hand can no longer feel warmth. Let it stand there at the edge of the path. You do not need to fight it. Control has been trying in its awkward way to keep you from being hurt. It has tried to predict, arrange, correct, prevent, prepare and hold. It has worked through the jaw, through the brow, through the belly, through the hours before sleep. It has mistaken tension for safety. Tonight, instead of arguing with it, imagine placing a small blanket around its shoulders. It is tired too. It can sit down. The second shape is comparison. Perhaps it looks like a mirror, a scale, a row of windows, a marketplace of voices, a path that keeps dividing because someone else seems farther ahead. Let it stand there too. It has been trying to help you belong. It has watched others to learn where you are allowed to stand. It has asked, am I enough? Am I late? Am I less? Am I loved? Am I falling behind? It has asked so often that the asking itself became a kind of loneliness. Tonight, comparison can sit beside control. It does not need to keep measuring in the dark. There is no audience here. There is no market. There is no stage. There is only the body. Breathing. The third shape is the old pain that keeps returning. Resentment or regret, bitterness or self-blame. The memory that wants to be held because being held makes it feel important. Let it appear as a stone, perhaps, or in an opened letter, or a coal that has finally cooled enough to touch. It too has been trying to protect something tender. It has said, remember this, do not let it happen again, do not let them forget, do not let yourself forget. But remembering and caring are not the same. Tonight, the stone can be set on the ground. The letter can be placed on a shelf. The cooled coal can return to earth. See these three shapes sitting quietly at the edge of the path. They are not banished. They are resting. They will not be asked to guide you into sleep. You can walk past them without hatred. You can feel the path beneath your feet, soft with pine needles, dim with moonlight, leading down and down through trees. Every step away from them is also a step deeper into the body. The mind may glance back. That is all right. The shapes remain seated. They do not need you to return. They, too, are learning stillness. As you move deeper down this inward path, the body becomes like a small monastery at night. The outer gate is closed, not against the world, but for quiet. The courtyard is swept imperfectly, and the imperfect sweeping is peaceful. A few leaves remain near the wall. No one needs to remove them now. In one room, a bowl of water reflects a faint window. In another, a lamp burns low. Somewhere, a wooden floor has cooled after the day. Imagine awareness walking through this monastery slowly. extinguishing unnecessary lamps. Not all lamps, just the bright ones that kept the mind working. A lamp of planning goes dim. A lamp of comparison goes dim. A lamp of replaying conversations goes dim. A lamp of defending yourself goes dim. A lamp of needing to know how others feel about you goes dim. A lamp of judging your own rest goes dim. The monastery is not dark in a frightening way. It is dark in the way a room becomes kind after candles are lowered. Your body can be that monastery. The forehead is the front gate, now quiet. The throat is the covered walkway, now open. The chest is the meditation hall, warm and still. The belly is the kitchen after everyone has eaten, bowls washed, fire banked. No hurry left. The hips are the stone foundation. The legs are the path leading down to the sleeping garden. The feet are the gate at the far end, closed softly. Let awareness move through each place and lower the lamps. If some lamp resists, let it burn low on its own. There is no need to force darkness. Darkness comes when the oil of effort is no longer being poured. You can stop pouring. The body knows how to use the oil that remains. The breath becomes the caretaker, moving from room to room, not speaking, only making sure the doors are easy. The bedding is warm, the ashes are safe. Feel that breath caretaker now. It moves through the nose, down the throat, into the chest, into the belly. It checks nothing anxiously. It simply passes. On the exhale, it leaves again, and another lamp grows softer. Planning softer, measuring softer, remembering softer. Even the wish to let go becomes softer. Because the wish itself can be a form of holding. You do not have to hold the wish. You can let the wish lie down with the other voices. Now imagine the body from the outside, as if you were looking gently from above, without judgment, without distance, just with tenderness. I person lying in bed, I body that has tried, I body that has carried days, weather, hunger, love, disappointment, small victories, private doubts, a face that has smiled when it was tired, eyes that have looked for answers, hands that have worked, touched, typed, lifted, washed, held, released, a chest that has kept breathing through many moods, a belly that has absorbed the world, legs that have moved through rooms and roads, feet that have stood in places where no one knew how much effort it took. See this body not as an object to improve, but as a companion to thank. It has brought you to this bed. It has remained with you through confusion. It has done enough for one day. Let gratitude be very simple. Not a bright emotion, not a performance of positivity, just a soft acknowledgement. Thank you. Forehead, you may rest. Thank you, eyes. You may rest. Thank you, jaw, you may rest. Thank you, throat. You may rest. Shoulders, you may rest. Thank you, hands. You may rest. Thank you, heart. You may rest. Thank you, belly. You may rest. Thank you, back. You may rest. You may rest. Thank you, legs. You may rest. Thank you, feet. You may rest. Each thank you is like a small lamp being covered with a paper shade. The light remains but softer. The mind may not be accustomed to speaking kindly to the body. It may try to turn gratitude into a task. Let that soften too. A task is not needed. Only warmth, only the felt sense that this breathing body is not an enemy. Not a project, not a comparison, not a failure to be corrected before sleep. It is the place where sleep will happen. It is the temple of this ordinary night. Let the body feel appreciated in the simplest possible way. Let the muscles loosen under that appreciation. Let the skin feel the air. Let the bones feel the bed. Let the blood move in its hidden channels without being supervised. Let the nervous system receive the message slowly. Safe enough. Safe enough, safe enough. Not perfectly safe in a perfect world. Safe enough in this room, in this breath, in this supported body, to let go for a while. If there is still a thread of wakefulness, imagine it as a strand of silk stretched between your mind and the waking world. It may be attached to tomorrow's duties. It may be attached to a person. It may be attached to a question without an answer. Do not cut it harshly. Let it loosen. Loosen lace along the thread slackens. It no longer pulls. You can feel the distance between you and the waking world widening in the gentlest way. The duties remain, but farther away. The people remain, but held by their own night. The questions remain, but folded into darkness. You remain here, less pulled, less bright, more deeply supported. Let the strand of silk drift down onto the ground. Perhaps another strand appears. Let that one loosen too. Another. Softer. Another, almost invisible. Each one slackens. And the body becomes heavier. The mind may say, but what if I forget something? The night answers without words. What is truly needed can return in the morning. The mind may say, but what if I have not done enough? The night answers. Rest is part of doing enough. The mind may say, but what if the old pain comes back? The night answers. Then it will be met in a rested body. Let these answers be felt, not thought. Feel them in the shoulders. Feel them in the hands. Feel them in the belly. Feel them in the soles of the feet. The body does not need a full philosophy to release. It needs repeated signals of safety, warmth, weight, darkness, breath, support. Again and again. Weight, darkness, breath, support. Let those 5 quiet words become almost physical. Warmth in the chest, weight in the limbs, darkness behind the eyes, breath moving low, support underneath everything. Nothing fancy, nothing to visualize perfectly. Only the steady language of rest repeating until the thinking mind grows bored, then drowsy, then soft. And if, somewhere inside, you still feel loyalty to your burdens, let that loyalty be honored and gently understood. Sometimes we do not put things down because we think carrying proves love. We think worry proves love. We think comparison proves ambition. We think resentment proves self-respect. We think regret proves that the past mattered. But love can remain when worry loosens. Ambition can remain when comparison quiets. Self-respect can remain when resentment cools. The past can matter without being replayed all night. Let these truths center like dim light under a door. They do not need to convince every part of you immediately. One part can believe them while another part sleeps. The deeper mind can learn while the surface mind drifts. You can rest before you are completely free. You can rest as the freeing happens slowly, quietly, in the tissues, in the breath, in dreams you may not remember. There is wisdom in not demanding total transformation before sleep. The seed does not become a tree before it rests in soil. The tide does not explain itself before turning. The bell does not hold its sound forever to prove that it rang. It rings then fades. Let your effort ring and fade. Let your caring ring and fade. Let your day ring and fade. Feel the fading as kindness. Feel how the body knows what to do with fading. Eyelids heavy, jaw loose, shoulders wide. Arms warm, hands open, chest in, belly deep. Hips sinking, legs quiet, feet far away. The whole body is becoming a softer field. And in that field, the 3 old burdens are no longer central. They are at the edge, seated under trees, covered by their own small blankets, no longer calling your name. You can leave them there. You can walk deeper. You can stop walking. You can lie down inside the dark and let the dark do what your effort could not. Let one more wave of softness move through you, slower than before. This wave does not come from effort. It comes from the fact that you have stopped resisting the support beneath you. It begins above the head, like warm rain forming in a dark cloud, and it lowers itself without hurry. It touches the scalp releases. It touches the forehead releases. It touches the temples, and the temples release their small clocks, their measuring of time, their sense that something must happen soon. Nothing must happen soon. It touches the eyes, and the eyes release the old habit of seeking shape and proof. It touches the ears, and the ears release the need to interpret every sound. It touches the mouth, and the mouth releases the need to prepare any answer. Down the face, down the jaw, down the throat. The wave is warm, but not bright. It is like bathwater cooling toward sleep. It moves into the shoulders, where many hidden contracts have been kept. The contract to be strong, the contract to be pleasant, the contract to be useful, the contract to know what to do, the contract to never disappoint. One by one, these contracts become damp paper. The ink spreads, the words become unreadable. You do not need to sign them again tonight. The wave moves into the arms. The arms release the reaching. The hands release the grasping. The fingers release the imaginary edges of old problems. The wave moves through the chest. The chest releases the guarded breath. The heart releases the belief that it must stay tense in order to keep loving. The wave moves through the back. The back releases the invisible packs it has carried. It moves into the belly. The belly releases the knots made from waiting. It moves into the hips. The hips release old readiness. It moves into the legs, and the legs release the road. It moves into the feet, and the feet release the ground they no longer have to stand upon. Now the wave has passed through the whole body, and it does not need to be repeated perfectly. Its work continues in the dark, like rainwater soaking roots after the rain itself has become quiet. You can rest in the truth that not everything must be finished in order to be complete for tonight. A cup can be cracked and still hold warmth. A pattern can be uneven and still carry beauty. A letter can be late and still contain love. A garden can be closed in winter and still be alive. A mirror can be useful and still face the wall. A tide can refuse command and still feed the shore. A bell can tremble and still call people home. A map can be incomplete and still guide a traveler. A family can change and still be love. These are not lessons to memorize. They are permissions. Permissions to be human. Permissions to sleep before every question has been answered. Permissions to let the unfinished remain unfinished for a few dark hours. Let those permissions settle into the body as if they were small warm stones placed along the spine. One at the base of the skull. One between the shoulder blades. One behind the heart. One at the lower back. One in the bowl of the pelvis. One behind each knee. One under each heel. Warm stones. Steady stones, not burdens but supports. They do not ask to be carried, they carry you. Feel how different that is. I burden says, hold me or something will be lost. I support says, lean here and nothing essential will be lost. Let the bed be support. Let the breath be support. Let the darkness be support. Let the simple permission to be unfinished be support. Perhaps the body understands this sooner than the mind. That is fine. The body may go ahead. The mind can follow later, softly, if it wishes. Now the practice becomes almost too simple to call practice. Soften the forehead. Let the eyes be dark. Let the tongue rest. Let the jaw hang loose. Let the shoulders fall. Let the hands open. Let the breath move. Let the belly be warm. Let the hips sink. Let the legs be heavy. Let the feet be far away. Again, but more quietly. Forehead soft, eyes dark, jaw loose. Shoulders low, hands open. Breath slow, belly warm. Hips deep, legs heavy, feet far. Again, even more quietly, not as a command, only as a fading echo. Soft head, dark eyes, quiet mouth, low shoulders, warm chest, loose belly, deep hips, heavy legs, far feet. You may not hear every word now. That is good. You do not need every word. The words are only stepping stones leading to a place where words are not needed. You miss one, another appears. If you miss many, the silence appears. The silence is the real path. Let the silence between phrases become wider. Let the mind drift into those spaces. It does not have to come back quickly. It can stay a little longer in each space, a little longer after each exhale, a little longer after each image fades, a little longer after each thought forgets what it was trying to be. This is how sleep begins to gather, not by force, but by lengthening the quiet between things. Feel the whole body now as one warm shape, not a collection of parts. One warm shape resting in one dark room. The shape has edges, but the edges are soft. The room has walls, but the walls are far away. The breath has movement, but the movement is small. Everything is becoming less separate. The bed and the body, the breath and the quiet, the thought and the space after thought. Listener in the night, you do not have to disappear. You only have to stop holding yourself so tightly. Let the outline soften. Let the names soften. Let the story soften. There is a person here, yes. But that person is allowed to be less busy being a person for a while. No role, no comparison, no defense, no performance, only warmth resting in darkness, only weight returning to support, only breath entering and leaving a body that does not need to explain itself. If sleep is near, let it come. If sleep is already beginning, let it deepen. If wake-off signals remains, let wake-off signals be soft and low. There is no failure here. There is only the gradual dimming of effort, the gradual kindness of gravity, the gradual widening of quiet. Let that be enough. Let enough be enough. Before everything becomes fully dim, let there be one last gentle settling through the whole field of the body. No effort, just a soft recognition that the body is already descending. The head is not trying to be wise now. The face is not trying to be acceptable. The throat is not trying to be clear. The shoulders are not trying to be strong. The hands are not trying to be useful. The heart is not trying to be understood. The belly is not trying to be calm. The hips are not trying to be ready. The legs are not trying to go anywhere. The feet are not trying to stand. Each part is relieved of its daytime name. Head becomes warmth. Face becomes quiet. Throat becomes passage. Shoulders become weight. Hands become openness. Heart becomes a low lamp. Belly becomes water. Hips become earth. Legs become stillness. Feet become distance. Let this change happen slowly, as if language itself were melting from the body. You do not have to call the jaw. You can feel only soft heaviness. You do not have to call the chest a chest. You can feel only warm breathing. You do not have to call the mind a mind. You can feel only dim movement, softening at the edges. The teachings too can lose their names. Control is no longer a concept. It is only a place in the body that has unclenched a little. Comparison is no longer a concept. It is only the eyes resting without searching. Old pain is no longer a concept. It is only a weight that has moved from the center to the edge. Everything becomes physical. And then everything physical becomes quiet. Perhaps you can sense the bed as a wide raft on dark water, carrying you without any rowing. The raft does not ask where you have been. It does not ask what you failed to finish. It does not ask who approved, who forgot, who misunderstood, who seemed ahead, who seemed behind. It only floats. It only holds. The water beneath it is deep and slow, and in that water, the day's reflections stretch, blur, and disappear. And reflection becomes a line of gold, then nothing. Eye window reflection becomes a pale square, then nothing. Lay face remembered becomes a softness, then nothing clear. This is not loss. It is rest. The mind is allowed to stop sharpening every image. The heart is allowed to stop keeping every account. The body is allowed to become an unnamed warmth in the dark. Stay there, if staying is possible. Drift there if drifting is easier. Let the raft carry you a little farther from the shore of effort. The shore is still there. Morning will find it. But tonight the water is kind, and the raft is steady, and your hands do not need to touch the oars. Let the silence under you become even more trusted. Sometimes the mind waits for a final proof that it is safe to sleep. But the deepest safety tonight is not a proof. It is a felt sense, the steady surface beneath the back, the slow air near the skin, the small warmth gathered under the blanket, the fact that nothing in this moment is asking you to stand up and carry the world. Let that fact enter the body in layers, into the skin first, where the day touched you, into the muscles, where effort gathered, into the bones, where old endurance lives, into the breath, where the body keeps making peace with change. Inhale, and the body receives. Exhale, and the body gives back. It has always been this way. Receiving and giving back, holding and releasing, waking and sleeping. You are not learning something foreign. You are returning to something ancient, long before you had words for control, comparison, regret, or letting go. The body already knew how to release and exhale. It already knew how to grow heavy when tired. It already knew how to close the eyes when darkness became kind. Let that older wisdom lead now. Let thought become the younger student, following behind, no longer giving instructions. The older wisdom says, soften. The body softens. It says, sink. The body sinks. It says enough. The mind may not fully believe it, but the body can believe first. Enough for tonight. Enough effort. Enough remembering. Enough measuring. Enough holding the cup, the map, the mirror, the stone. Enough. The word is not hard. It is warm. It is a folded blanket. It is a lamp lowered by a careful hand. It is a door closing softly on a room where everyone has finally gone to rest. Let enough spread through the body once more, very quietly. Enough in the forehead, enough behind the eyes, enough in the jaw, enough in the throat, enough in the shoulders that have carried what they could, enough in the hands that have done what they could, enough in the heart that has loved with the understanding it had, enough in the belly that has held many unnamed feelings, enough in the back that has stayed upright, enough in the legs that have brought you here, enough in the feet that may now be still. The word enough does not close the future. It only closes the labor of this hour. You may continue tomorrow, but you do not need to continue now. It says, what remains unresolved can remain unresolved in the dark without being held in your muscles. It says the world will not become kinder because you deny yourself sleep. It says, lay the mind down beside the body. Let them rest together. Let the breath be the small bridge between them. No more climbing, no more proving, no more leaning out into the night to see whether everything is where it should be. The blanket is here, the pillow is here, the bed is here, the breath is here, and here is enough. It is enough that the night is here. It is enough that the body has weight. It is enough that the breath keeps coming back like a kind guest who knows not to wake anyone. It is enough that the room is holding you without asking for anything in return. It is enough that the mind can stop for a while, and that stopping is not failure, only rest. It is enough that the day can remain imperfect and still be finished. It is enough that you can drift toward sleep without solving the shape of your life. It is enough that the stories have already done their work. It is enough that the old burdens can wait outside the door. It is enough that the blanket is warm. It is enough that the dark is gentle. It is enough that you are here, and safe enough, and no longer required to carry more than this small, breathing moment. The room is dim now. The stories are far away. Only the bed remains, and breath, and the soft weight of your body. The mountain has stopped asking to be arranged. The river no longer needs a pattern. The boat rests in black water. The letter has become smoke. The blossom waits without fear. The mirror faces the wall. The tide moves by moonlight. The bell fades into the valley. The map is folded. The rain fills the open cup. These images are only shadows now. Let them blur. Let them lose their names. You do not have to hold even the teachings. You do not have to remember what to release. The body is releasing in its own way. The jaw is loose. The eyes are dark. The hands are open or becoming open. The chest is warm. The belly is soft. The legs are heavy. The feet are quiet. A thought may come. It can be distant. Another thought may come. It can pass farther away. There is no need to follow. There is no need to answer. The bed holds you below the thinking. The night holds the bed. The quiet holds the night. Less to hold, less to know, less to become. The face softens. The shoulders sink. The belly loosens. The legs are heavy and still. Somewhere a bell has already faded. Somewhere a tide has already turned. Somewhere rain touches bamboo and no one counts the drops. You can drift without listening for the shore. You can rest without checking whether rest has begun. You can let sleep approach as a shy animal would approach an open hand, slowly, softly, without being called by name. The breath is low. The room is low. The mind is dim. Warmth gathers in small places. In the palms behind the heart, under the ribs, along the backs of the knees. Nothing bright remains to solve. Nothing sharp remains to hold. The old stones are outside the door. They can stay there. You can go on without them. Now only quiet, a little warmth, a little breath. The mind dim as a lamp behind paper. The body low and safe. Nothing to fix, nothing to measure, nothing to carry. The edges of the room soften. The edges of the body soften. Even the breath becomes mist. It comes, it goes. It comes from somewhere gentle. It goes somewhere deep. You do not need to follow it all the way. You can let the last small effort loosen. You can let the last small watcher close its eyes. The dark is kind. The bed is near. The world is far. And even this thought begins to soften and soften into the hush beneath the hush.